Welcome back, everybody, to Rebuild Projects, and you are watching the Back to the Future boat build. That's where I'm taking a 1985 fiberglass lake boat and I'm turning it into my dream boat. It's on my bucket list of builds, and we are well into it, guys. I want to thank you if this is your first time joining us, and go back and check out all the other videos that have led us up to this point. We are working on the bow today, and I'm getting very excited because it kind of not only is the tip of the spear when it comes to the boat, but it's also pretty much the last thing we got to do to the whole hull that's going to really be the final finishing little bit that I can say that the hull is done. I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in and supporting me from the very beginning. Now I am trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. And if you don't know, 1,000 subscribers is when the YouTube Google mothership comes down and it sends a beam right into my workshop and it beams me up into a higher level of consciousness and monetary world of super saiyan power. I get beamed up to Planet Partner. And Planet Partner is an amazing place, I hear. It's a place where you can go part-time in your work and work on videos all the time. And then eventually, who knows, maybe you can do it full-time. It is such a beautiful place. Subscribe now. Today is a milestone. It's a great day because we are going to finish what has been pretty much like a month and a half to 2 months of straight work on the hull. And we are going to be closing in the bow tip. That's the tip of the boat where the bow roller is going to go. The bow roller allows me to bring up an anchor without scratching the boat. So we're going to work on that today. I'm going to explain to you how I'm going to make this anchoring system that'll be able to be used with the capstan that I showed you last week. And then we're going to jump right into the hatch. The hatch that we put in last week, I need to make it watertight, so there's some gasketing involved there, and I need to, reinforce it. I have to put some locks on it to make it watertight and very strong. But as well, in order to, get those locks to work and get everything to be really sound, I need to come up with some brackets. So we're going to make our own brackets out of some aluminum that I have. I still have some flat bar and some flat plates around here in the shop. So we'll be doing that today. And then at the end, I'm going to go over how I intend to incorporate a folding or pop-up tent into the hatch and into the bow deck with some ribs, and it's going to be pretty cool. So stay tuned. That's what we're doing right now. Now this hatch needed some strengthening, and I thought the best way to do it was to get some PVC board that I had in the shop, cut it to size, and this is going to help me to strengthen it, but it's also going to help me down the road for the tent. I glued it down with some construction adhesive, and then I just weighed it with a bunch of different stuff I had in the shop. Once that was all kind of dry, I was able to move on to the gasket. Now I bought a bunch of different gaskets, and believe it or not, I ended up going with one of the gaskets that came with the old tonneau cover I had. It was perfect. It was big and thick and squishy. I used some double-sided tape, and this was supposed to be super double-sided tape, and it lived up to its name, because once I put some acetone on those gaskets, I was able to stick it down, push it down, and it did not want to come off. So at least for now, that's a good sign. Now on the back gutter, I had to put a gasket there, and I just kind of beveled the edges a little bit so that it would fit nice. And then after all this, I took some black Sikaflex, I went around the border of the gaskets on either side, and I just smoothed it down with my thumb. And I think that is going to do the job.
Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to wing this bow tip a little bit. I'm going to use kind of my common sense to make it all symmetrical. But here I am taping it off. I just want to find out where the lines are. Now I'm going back to my composite board, and I made kind of a stepped little ledger, and this is going to be the starting point. I'm just kind of going to screw it in here just to tack it in to get an idea. And once I've done that, and test the bow roller, see if I like the way it looks. Now this is just a support. It's giving me the shape that I want, and most importantly, it's giving me a pitch and an angle where I know that water will run off once it comes out of that gutter for the hatch that I built. Now I'm taking some cardboard, I'm making a template, and I'm oversizing it because this template is meant to be a piece of plywood that's going to be attached to that front here, and that marine ply, it's all going to go on the inside. I'm just testing it on top to see if I like the fit. Now, everything needs to get sanded. I'm just trying to give it a bit of teeth, a little bit of something for the epoxy, for the resin to bite into. I'm getting all the edges and angles. I'm using 1708 here, and I'm going to be alternating with some chop mat. Now, I know this piece is going to get a lot of water on it, so I'm not only fiberglassing the bottom, but I'm also going to fiberglass the top. And then, in a little bit here, once it's in place and is cured for a few days, I'm going to fiberglass multiple layers underneath. And then I'm going to do at least 2 layers on the top. But this gives it a little bit of strength, but mostly what it's going to do for me is going to allow it to be watertight. I'm going to make a little correction here. It wasn't 1708, this is just 17 ounce biaxial. Now, sometimes I want it to just lock in place here, so I'm using my peel ply, and then I'll come back to it and do another layer. But there we go. We have a down and dirty, nitty gritty bow tip, bow roller pocket that I think is going to be okay. So here we go. Let it fit inside and like a glove. Oh yeah. Now, when I'm building these type of things, I'm definitely winging it, but I'm also just know that I'm going in stages and nothing that can't ever be undone. I am about to butter this up with a bunch of thickened resin, and then I'm just going to screw it so that it acts like clamps for me. When you can't get clamps to reach into the very bow tip there, I find the best way is just to use screws. I know I'm going to be doing a few layers on top, so the screws I'm going to take out after, but with the screws and the washers together, it just sucks it in until everything cures. I'm really just conscious here of the fact that I want water to run from the new windshield, go into those gutters, and to be able to come down that front little trough and into this bow pocket and then run off the front. I mean, that's what I got in my mind. Whether it does that in actuality, we're gonna find out. So it's cured, I've taken the screws out, and now I'm just giving it, a 60 grit. I just want to sand anything that looks ugly, that's protruding. It's all sanded and kind of got the shape that I want. I spend a little more attention just, refining the profile, because these next 2 layers of fiberglass, if I didn't do that extra little bit of sanding, it would show through, and I wouldn't be able to get rid of any of those mistakes. So once again, 2 more layers. Not only does this tie in the strength, but it just adds to that watertight front bow that I'm looking for. Now I'm pretty liberal with how much resin I use. And then here I've mixed up some gel coat in some of the resin that was left over, and that's just going to help me lock everything in and be easier to sand. Once that's dry, I'm able to then mix up some fairing and do the first coat of fairing on top. And this, I'm going pretty heavy because I know I'm going to sand quite a bit of it back. I'm just getting into all the crevices, especially around where those gutters intersect. I want the water to be able to run off quite easily. Now I add an extra little bit of hardener so it kicks off quicker. I have to work faster, but I can do more in a day. Here I had added a little guide coat of black spray paint just to highlight the low spots. But once this is all sanded out, I'm going to put a second coat of fairing on. And when you look at the contour of it, it's starting to really take shape. I like it a lot. Of course, gotta let it dry, more sanding. I think my life in the last 2 months here has been just sanding and sanding and sanding. But once that's done, I'm able to then, do some hand sanding. I actually have this little oscillating tool head that has these little triangular sanding block on it, and it works really well for getting in to all these junctions. But when in doubt, sand it out. And now I'm just going for a little more of a flat sander here. And once I've finished all that, I got some primer on it, and I think it looks great. It's not traditional by any means. It's my own little take on a bow roller pocket. It's not revolutionary, but I think this next little bit is going to be really cool when we integrate the capstan. Now the bow tip is done and the gasket's installed on the hatch. It is time for, hopefully a final testing. Now the key to this is, once I have it in place, what I'm really trying to find out is this gasket too thick, or will I be able to, close this hatch down in the front? I want it to be tight because the more compressive force that it has, the more it's going to really activate that gasket. And the only way to find out is really to get these hinges on. Now, these are kind of special hinges. I don't know if you noticed, but the hinges have a central pin, and I will be able to pull those pins out. Now, this is all my hardware. I am a hoarder when it comes to all things boat hardware. I've been going to auctions forever, and the stuff on the bench here is just stuff I pulled out that I'm going to definitely use for this project. We're going to start off with these locks, these hatch locks. I had a few kicking around, and we're going to use 2 of them. And one, I like the way they seat themselves down flat. 2, the motion of them twisting to close is going to be able to really suck down that gasket. Now I cut the holes with a hole saw. I think it was a 2-inch hole saw. And these locks, handles, fit in just perfect. I'm going around with some Sikaflex, and I am not being stingy. So how these work is they fit into your hole that you cut. I'm locating them right on the corner of the hatch here at the very front. They've got a bottom plate. And then it just takes a bolt and a nut. I'm using locking nuts. And, without getting too much Sikaflex on you, you just tighten them down. I sure like these needle nose pliers for jobs like this. They help out. Next is handles, and I need to get a handle underneath, so I'm using a pretty big one. That's going to pull the hatch down from inside. And I'm going to use a smaller one that's going to be on the top of the hatch. It's not the prettiest look. It's not as sleek of a design as I was going for, but it's going to be safe. And I think that's what is going to matter the most out on the water. Now I've taken the time to take the flat bar and the flat raw pieces of aluminum. I've bent them up, and I've kind of started to drill holes. Now whether it's the gutter, the interior gutter channel of the bow deck, or whether it's the hatch with that new insert I made, I'm strategically putting the holes on these brackets to correspond with different locations. Some of these brackets aren't going to hold the struts, but they are going to be bracing. Bracing the corners, bracing the front, pretty much anywhere I have a lock that I know I'm going to be twisting, and there's going to be quite a bit of pulling and compressive force on it. I'm going to beef up those edges and corners with these aluminum bent flat bar. I'm not worried about the finishing on it. I basically just kind of taken a sander to it and roughed it up. Everything is going to be probably painted with some epoxy paint down the road, especially when I go do the interior of the boat. But you can see here how this kind of sits in that corner, a little pocket there. And that lock on the top of the hatch is going to be corresponding with that pocket. Now these are going to be brackets for the struts. I have some lower brackets and some upper brackets that attach. And for a few of the holes, I'm just taking the liberty to throw some thread in there to accept this little ball joint. Once those are all ready to go, I take that and the struts and jump into the hole here. So now you can see how that bracket, I wanted a lot of surface area so that I could screw it in over a larger area, because I know that pressure point is going to be worn out over time. Same with the upper part. Now here we go. Now we're getting to some fun stuff. So these are some flat bar that I got, about 8 feet, 10 feet long. Just rounding the edges on one side. And I'm about to mark where I want to bend. And I'm taking Grandpa's old angle finder. I'm going to use it to transfer this bend, this angle to to the aluminum. And what I'm bending up here is I'm bending up some ribs. And these ribs are going to eventually sit inside the fabric pockets of the tent. So when we go to build this tent, and I'm going to actually buy a sewing machine this week, and we're going to end up making this tent ourselves. It's going to have some ribbed pockets. Yeah, there's some fit and finish that I need to figure out here. And I do. But it's a matter of how do I get these ribs to fit in nice and tight like I want, but have the locks work too. And I ended up just shortening them up a little bit, which gave me just enough space to get the locking mechanism to fall through and still be able to lock. All right, let's talk anchor. Now, it is an unproven thing, and I'm putting a lot of faith into my idea, but it starts off with the bow roller and the bow pocket that we just solidified. Then you kind of got to know what you're going to be pulling up, and this is what I got. I've had this forever. I've had it for years and years and years, and I've never been able to use it. And I know it's a little oversized for my boat, but I'm going to try to make it work under the premise that if this works, which it's way oversized, then when I downsize to an appropriate size anchor, a stainless one or whatever in the future, then it's definitely going to work awesome. So I'm kind of like over-engineering it so that down the road, or maybe not. But to make this one work, it's a little too long. So it's 15 pounds. So I'm gonna cut off about 6 inches, 5-6 inches. I'm gonna take the hole here and I'm gonna drill it in. If I have to shave down a little bit, I might kind of profile it. But this is the anchor that we're working with. That'll go in the bow roller. It's a Bruce anchor, so I like it. It's a really nice anchor. Now, coming from the anchor, we're gonna have the rope. So I've got some 1/2-inch rope here. That's the ends are pre-done for me. But I also have some 3/4-inch rope, which is probably what I'm gonna use. That rope will go onto a shackle, probably a pivoting shackle attached to the anchor here. And then that rope will come along, and instead of going down into the bow like most do, I'm going to use these stainless steel pulleys and figure a way of changing the direction where I'm going to get it somehow to, I'm not sure how yet, but it's going to change and go 90 degrees into a hole, and that hole is going to be where this pipe and the bow pocket meet. Now I'm going to take this pipe, this plumbing pipe, and I'm going to bend it with heat, and it's going to bend, and then it's going to follow the contour of the bow on the inside, and I'm going to tuck it up as high as possible, and then this is going to connect with the pipe that I have already coming out of the angled gunnel. So there should be one pipe. I'm going to try not to cut it and just bend it with heat so that if any water comes in, it's not going to leak into the cabin, hopefully. So a weak point will be the hole here, but I'm going to figure a way of dealing with that, epoxy or whatnot. And then water definitely will come down on the rope, and then should come out that gunnel, and when it gets that far, we'll deal with it there. But once it gets from the gunnel, then we'll be able to use the capstan that's located on the midway part of the gunnel, and that should allow me to have some pulling force to get this big fat anchor up. let's talk about how the hatch tent fabric part is going to work. I created this lip. It's about 1.5 inches, goes all the way around, with the intent that we're going to glue some Velcro on this side. The fabric, or marine fabric, that I've purchased, I think the best way to do this is going to be creating linear segments of fabric that will be sewed together. And when I sew them, I'm going to have them a little bit long and sew them with 2 seams so that it'll create some sort of pocket that these can slide into. And having these 2 in those pockets will give it a built-in rigidity so that it won't collapse on itself, the fabric. So that's what these are for. But it'll also allow it to close on itself. And then the fabric will then be able to come down, water will be able to cascade and go off. And then when it gets to the bottom here, it's a little TBA. I haven't figured it out quite yet. So I'm either gonna do an internal Velcro that will attach to this with kind of a sleeve that will extend out so that when the water hits it and everything, it'll be able to just cascade off. But that would be a case of opening it up, Velcroing it on, and then putting the sleeve out, which is a little bit fiddly-farty. So I'm not too sure how I want to do it yet, but either way, the whole goal is to get this fabric all sewed up. And before I can even do that, I'm going out this week to buy myself a sewing machine and learning how to sew. So that'll be fun. Yeah, but we're getting there. So this part here is maybe a week or 2 away, realistically. But I think next week we may be jumping into here or back in to the helm and trying to button all that up.